Hi guys, welcome back. So this is Pax Chapter 8, Part 2. If you haven't had a chance to watch Part 1 yet, make sure you do that before you listen to this video. But if you've already listened to Part 1, you're in the right place. So here we go. Peter watched her disappear down a pine-framed path, rolling with a limp so deep that it looked painful. Then he crawled across the floor and stuffed his belongings back into his backpack. He pulled himself up to the workbench. The effort made him dizzy, and he had to white-knuckle the wood until his head cleared. His foot throbbed fiercely when he was upright, and by testing it slightly, he knew he wasn't going to be able to walk on it. Vola would bind it, though. He would be able to walk on it then. He had to. He hoisted himself onto the bench to wait. He hadn't been able to see much of the barn that night before, even with a flashlight. Now he took it in. The floor was swept bare, with bags of seed and fertilizer stacked neatly by the door. The place smelled of clean hay and wood, and not of animals, although he could hear chickens nearby. The workbench took up a whole gravel of the wall. It was lined with small tools and pieces of wood. Opposite, dark against the bright rectangle of the doorway besides it, draped burlap covered a bunch of things mounted on the wall. Another convulsion of shivers shook him, this time not from the cold. The covered mounds were shaped like human heads. Any number of perfectly harmless things could be hanging on the barn wall, but what they really looked like were human heads. His throat went dry and his heart began to kick hard. He'd been stupid and careless. Probably the crazy woman was going to let him go. Why wouldn't she let him go? But maybe she wasn't. He found the knife that she had and wrapped his palm around its smooth grip. Vola had the upper hand in whatever was going to happen between them, but that didn't mean he couldn't defend himself. He slid the blade into his pocket just as she appeared in the doorway. "Drink this." She handed Peter a mug and set a bowl beside him. Peter sniffed the mug. "Cider. There's a measure of willow bark in it, so drink it all." Willow bark? Aspirin in the wild. Peter put the mug down. He wasn't going to drink a crazy woman's brew. "Suit yourself." Vola took the bowl and began stirring the green paste with her finger. "What's that?" "Poultice, with arnica for the bruising and comfrey for the bone." She gestured for him to prop his foot up on the bench. The poultice felt good and soothing as she eased it over his hot, tight skin. She'd untied a bandana from her overall strap and wrapped it around his foot, binding it with a second scarf so that it felt secure. Then she straightened up, wiping her hands on her overalls. "How tall are you?" "5'3". "Why?" Vola didn't answer. She rummaged through a stack of lumber, brought several long, narrow pieces over to a pair of sawhorses, and began sawing them into paired lengths. The cut wood smelled fresh and clean. As she nailed short boards across the tops of the two larger ones, Peter understood. Crutches. She was making him a pair of crutches. The knife he'd stolen grew heavier across his thigh. In a few minutes, Vola had ankle braced the top boards and screwed on the hand rests. She measured the crutches against him, then sawed off an inch on the bottom of each. Then she rolled out an old tire from the corner of the barn. She went to the workbench. She scanned its length. Peter's cheeks burned as she turned to him. "Did you take my knife?" Her voice had turned dangerous, like something that could burst into flame and peel the roof off the barn. Peter felt dizzy and his heart began to thud again. He pulled the knife out and handed it to her. "Why?" Peter swallowed hard. His words were gone. "Why?" Because I was afraid you might kill me." "Kill you?" She eyed him hard. "What, because I live out in the woods? That makes me a murderer?" Peter raised his shoulder towards the wall of bladed tools. "My tools? I have 20 acres of trees to care for, and I'm a wood carver. You thought they were weapons?" Peter looked away, ashamed. "Look at me, boy." He turned back. "Maybe you are not wrong," she said, locking his gaze. "Maybe you see something. Maybe I am." She raised her hands and slowly pinched her fingers together in front of Peter's face, then suddenly flicked them open. "Boom! Dangerous like that. No warning." Peter flinched. "No, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Vola shot a palm at him and spun away. She cut 4 strips of rubber from the tire and then wrapped them around the crutch tops as grips and secured them with twine in silence. Then she held the crutches out. Peter placed one underneath each arm and eased himself onto the floor. It was an immediate comfort to be upright and balanced, with his injured foot safely tucked up. Take your weight on your palms. Lift yourself, don't hang. Plant the crutches, then swing through." Peter began to thank her, but Vola cut him off again. At the end of my road is the highway. Head left, and in a quarter of a mile you'll come across a gas station. You figure it out from there. She helped him into his backpack and then turned away, picked up the block of wood, and began to shave off slices as if he were no longer in the barn. Peter tried a step towards the door. He wobbled a little, but not much. That was a hop, Vola said without looking up. I said, swing through. Now get out of here. For a moment, Peter didn't move. He didn't know where he was headed, only that he was sure it wasn't back to his grandfather's. Vola turned and leaned towards him, pinched her fingers together, and then shot them out at him again. Go while you're still safe. And that's the end of part 2 of chapter 8. Don't forget to come back tomorrow for chapter 9.